Krylos 7 was a beautiful planet, filled with oceans that glimmered like polished glass and forests that stretched as far as the eye could see. But beauty did not mean safety. The colony that humans had built there was under siege. The Vorath, a ruthless alien species, had arrived without warning, attacking settlements, destroying supply lines, and cutting off communication with nearby star systems. The people of Krylos 7 were engineers, scientists, and explorers, not soldiers. They had come to this remote world seeking knowledge and resources, dreaming of a peaceful future. Now they were fighting for their lives with little more than determination and whatever weapons they could salvage. In the central command hub, Commander Elena Voss stared at the flickering screens. Alarms blared, lights pulsed red, and the sound of explosions echoed across the colony's perimeter. Her hands trembled slightly as she typed commands, directing small defense drones to slow the Vorath advance. "Commander," her lieutenant called, "the Vorath are adapting to our defenses. They're predicting our drone patterns. We won't hold for long." Elena clenched her jaw. She had known this day might come, but seeing it in full force was worse than she imagined. "Then we do what we've trained for," she said firmly. "Send the SOS. If anyone can help us, now is the time." The SOS was not a simple signal. It was a desperate message designed to reach every corner of human space. It contained the colony's location, the details of the attack, and a plea for help. Sending it meant broadcasting to every known human and allied vessel in the galaxy. But there was one group they hoped to reach above all others, the Deathworlders. The Deathworlders were legendary. Stories spoke of humans who had evolved on harsh planets where survival required more than intelligence or courage. It required adaptability, strength, and sheer toughness. Ordinary humans thought of them as almost mythical, as if they were superhumans shaped by death worlds that could crush ordinary colonies without effort. Elena hesitated before pressing the final button to send the signal. She knew that if the SOS worked, it could bring life-saving help. But she also knew the Deathworlders did not operate like anyone else. They were not diplomats. They were not negotiators. They were survival incarnate. And wherever they went, they brought power and precision that could crush any enemy, and sometimes, inadvertently, anything nearby. She took a deep breath and sent the signal. Far away in a dark system at the edge of human space, a fleet received the transmission. The ships were enormous, more like moving fortresses than conventional spacecraft. Their hulls were scarred from years of traveling through hostile environments. Each vessel carried thousands of Deathworlders, humans who had trained their bodies and minds to survive extremes that would kill ordinary people instantly. Admiral Koran, a veteran of countless battles on some of the galaxy's most dangerous planets, stared at the incoming signal. He did not smile, nor did he frown. He simply listened. "The Krylos 7 colony is under attack by the Vorath," the message said. "They require assistance immediately." Koran's eyes narrowed. He tapped a few commands on the console. The fleet's engines hummed, then roared to life. "Set a course for Krylos 7, he ordered. "We do not negotiate. We act." Unlike most humans, the Deathworlders did not wait to be asked politely. They did not send supplies or advisors first. They acted decisively, bringing full power to any situation they deemed worthy. Back on Krylos 7, the colonists worked frantically to reinforce their defenses. The Vorath were relentless. Their ships were fast, armed with energy weapons that could pierce the colony's shields in seconds. Swarms of smaller attack craft darted between buildings, firing on everything in sight. The colony's walls, made to withstand natural disasters, creaked and groaned under the assault. Inside the central command hub, Elena watched a Vorath vessel explode on the sensors. But the victory felt hollow. There were dozens more, and the colony was still vulnerable. She looked at her lieutenant. "We need a miracle," she said quietly. Her lieutenant nodded grimly. "The SOS is out. If anyone can help, it's the Deathworlders." Outside the hub, the colony's citizens were taking shelter wherever they could find it. Families huddled together in underground bunkers, engineers tried to repair damaged generators, and guards ran back and forth trying to hold the perimeter. Fear was everywhere, but so was determination. Humans had a reputation for survival, and even here, under near impossible circumstances, that reputation was alive. Among the crowd, a young boy named Taran clutched a small communicator. He had watched the Vorath destroy a nearby settlement and lost friends in the chaos. His parents were gone, and all he had left was his curiosity and courage. He whispered to himself, "Please, someone help us." Unseen by the colonists, the SOS signal had already reached far beyond their expectations. In hyperspace, the Deathworlder fleet moved with terrifying speed and precision, slicing through star systems that would take ordinary humans years to traverse. Every ship was a weapon, every crew member trained to endure conditions that would destroy normal people in moments. As the fleet approached Krylos 7, sensors picked up the Vorath patrols. The Vorath were confident, scanning the empty reaches of space for survivors or potential targets. They did not know what was coming. They had never encountered Deathworlders before, only human colonies like Krylos 7. On the command bridge of the Deathworlder flagship, Koran studied the readouts. "They will expect us to help, but they do not know what help looks like," he said. His crew nodded. There was no emotion in their movements, only readiness, focus, and lethal skill. The Deathworlders did not discuss diplomacy. They did not send warnings. Their presence alone was enough to change the balance of power. Back on Krylos 7, night was falling. The Vorath launched a massive strike on the colony's energy hub. Explosions lit the sky, and fires spread quickly. Elena knew that if the hub fell, communications and shields would collapse, leaving the colony defenseless. She turned to her lieutenant. "Hold them as long as you can. We have to survive until help arrives." The lieutenant nodded. "We will, but they're relentless." Taran, the young boy, had sneaked into the observation deck to watch the sky. He had heard stories of the Deathworlders, but he never thought he would see them. Suddenly, massive ships appeared in the distance, breaking through hyperspace. They were enormous, hulking vessels, covered in weaponry and reinforced armor. Their presence made the Vorath pause. The boy's eyes widened. "They're huge," he whispered. Explosions erupted as the Vorath attacked, but the Deathworlder ships were ready. Energy blasts bounced off their reinforced hulls, and they responded with overwhelming firepower. In moments, a Vorath strike group was destroyed, their ships reduced to drifting wrecks. Taran watched in awe, fear mixed with wonder as he realized that these were humans, just like him, but far stronger, far tougher, and far braver than anyone he had ever seen. Elena saw the fleet arrive on her sensors. Relief washed over her, but she knew better than to assume safety. She sent a message to the Deathworlders, not for help, but for coordination. The response was brief and blunt. "We are here. We do not negotiate. We act. Stand aside." There was no reassurance, no comforting words. Yet the message carried a promise. The Vorath would not survive this encounter. The colonists worked feverishly, preparing for the next wave of attacks. Engineers rigged traps around the colony, using whatever materials they could find. Soldiers took positions along walls and rooftops, ready to fight alongside the Deathworlders if needed. Taran returned to the observation deck, watching the battle unfold. The Deathworlders moved with efficiency and confidence, striking at the Vorath from unexpected angles, using the planet's terrain as a weapon. Even the young boy could see that these humans were not just powerful, they were unstoppable. As the night deepened, Krylos 7 held its breath. The Vorath would not give up easily, but neither would the Deathworlders. The SOS had been answered, but not in the way anyone expected. It was not a message of comfort or diplomacy. It was a signal that humanity, in its most extreme form, had arrived. For the first time since the attack began, Elena allowed herself a small, wary smile. The colony might survive. The Vorath might be defeated, and the humans of Krylos 7 were about to learn what it truly meant to be a Deathworlder ally. And somewhere deep in space, Admiral Corrin watched his fleet approach the planet. He did not speak. He did not smile. He only prepared. Because the moment the Vorath realized what they were facing, the war would change forever. The skies above Krylos 7 were alive with movement. Massive shapes appeared on the horizon, silhouetted against the twin suns setting in the distance. The colony's sensors had detected them first, hulking, armored ships unlike any the Vorath had ever encountered. They moved deliberately, powerfully, cutting through space with precision that spoke of centuries of experience. "Commander Voss," a lieutenant shouted over the comms, "we're detecting unknown ships entering orbit. They're massive." Elena leaned over the console, squinting at the images on the screen. The ships were enormous, far larger than anything she had seen. Their hulls were reinforced with layers of armor that glinted in the sunlight, and dozens of turrets bristled along their sides. "All units," she said firmly, "hold your positions. Do not engage unless ordered. These ships, they are not Vorath." The colony had hoped for reinforcements, small craft, a few advisors, maybe some supplies. But what appeared above them was a fleet capable of obliterating entire enemy armadas. Even the most seasoned soldiers of Krylos 7 stared in, awe and fear. Far from the colony, Admiral Corrin commanded from the bridge of his flagship. His eyes scanned the battlefield through countless monitors. "Deploy landing craft," he said in a calm, unwavering tone. "The colony will need guidance, but we do not wait for requests. We act." The Deathworlder landing craft were unlike anything Krylos 7 had. Each vessel resembled a moving fortress, reinforced to survive orbital bombardments and capable of delivering squads directly to the most dangerous locations. As they descended, smaller Vorath fighters tried to intercept them, but the Deathworlder ships seemed to anticipate every movement. A young colonist, Terran, watched from the observation deck. His heart raced as he saw the first landing craft touch down. Unlike the Vorath, who relied on speed and firepower, the Deathworlders exuded calm confidence. They moved with purpose, as if the chaos of battle did not even concern them. The first Deathworlder to step onto Krylos 7's soil was a tall, broad-shouldered human with dark, weathered skin and eyes that seemed to pierce everything around him. He carried a weapon unlike any Krylos 7 soldier had seen, simple, rugged, and terrifyingly effective. "Stay back," he said in a voice that demanded attention. It was not loud, but every colonist in the vicinity instinctively froze. "We will neutralize threats. Stand aside if you value your lives." Elena approached cautiously. "We appreciate your help," she said. "The Vorath." The Deathworlder shook his head. "We do not negotiate. We act. Tell your people to follow instructions and survive. That is all that matters." The colonists exchanged nervous glances. They had imagined that help would come gently, with advice and equipment. This was different. This was power. This was unstoppable. The Vorath had noticed the fleet as well. Their ships, sleek and fast, darted in to strike the landing craft. Energy beams streaked through the sky, but the Deathworlders' armor held. They returned fire with precision that left no room for error. Vorath ships exploded in showers of sparks and debris, and the few that survived were driven back, terrified by the ferocity of the newcomers. Terran could hardly believe his eyes. "They're like nothing I've ever seen," he whispered. Even from a safe distance, he felt the sheer force emanating from the Deathworlders. These humans were not ordinary. They were a force of nature. Inside the central command hub, Elena coordinated with her people. "Do not engage unless necessary," she reminded them. "Let them take the lead." She felt a mix of relief and unease. Relief because the Vorath were being stopped, and unease because she had no idea what would happen next. The first squad of Deathworlders moved swiftly through the colony. Their footsteps were silent, yet their presence filled the streets with authority. Every move was deliberate. Doors were forced open, broken machinery was repaired, and survivors were gathered and directed to safer zones. A Vorath patrol attempted a surprise attack on a supply depot, thinking the arrival of the Deathworlders would be a distraction. They were wrong. The squad intercepted them before they even fired a shot. In less than a minute, the patrol was neutralized, unharmed but incapable of causing any more damage. Colonists stared in disbelief. These humans did not just fight. They controlled the battlefield. The Vorath were powerful, but the Deathworlders were precise, strategic, and utterly fearless. Elena realized something profound. "They're showing us how to survive," she murmured. "Not by shielding us, but by teaching us to fight alongside them." The Vorath, now aware that Krylos 7 would not be an easy target, launched a larger assault. Dozens of ships formed a wedge in orbit, ready to bombard the colony. Energy beams cut across the atmosphere, igniting small fires and tearing through structures. Admiral Corrin's fleet moved in response. Massive ships descended from orbit, each firing in coordinated patterns that forced the Vorath into defensive positions. Explosions lit up the sky, illuminating the planet in bursts of light and smoke. The colony watched as ships collided, weapons fired, and entire squads of Vorath fighters were destroyed in minutes. Elena could hardly contain her awe. She had never seen anything like this. The Deathworlders were not just strong. They were engineers of survival, using both technology and instinct to control the battle. On the ground, the first group of Deathworlders began clearing Vorath forces from critical areas. Their weapons were simple in design, but incredibly effective. They moved silently through debris, quickly neutralizing threats without unnecessary violence. Terran followed cautiously behind one squad, fascinated by their tactics. They moved through alleys and ruined buildings, using the terrain as an advantage. A fallen tree became cover. A collapsed wall became a trap. Every element of the environment was a tool, not an obstacle. One Deathworlder paused and looked at him. "Stay close. Learn if you can," he said. There was no time for hesitation. The Vorath were still nearby, but they had underestimated the humans on Krylos 7, and they would pay for it. The first encounter ended quickly. The Vorath that remained scattered, retreating to regroup. But the Deathworlders were relentless. They did not chase. They did not gloat. They moved to secure the colony, ensuring that the survivors were safe and that the Vorath could not easily return. Elena walked alongside a Deathworlder squad, observing their methods. She realized that the SOS had not summoned traditional aid. It had summoned humans in their most extreme form, humans who had been shaped by hostile worlds, by conditions that tested every limit of survival. She turned to her lieutenant. "Prepare the colony for training," she said. "We are going to learn from them, or we won't survive the next attack." The lieutenant nodded. "Yes, Commander. But do you think the colonists are ready for this?" Elena smiled faintly. "They don't have a choice." Terran watched the Deathworlders as they moved through the city. One used a simple metal rod to create a trap that could disable a Vorath patrol without harming anyone else. Another demonstrated how to use the colony's broken machinery as a weapon. Every action was precise, calculated, and effective. He realized that the stories of Deathworlders were true. These humans were engineers, soldiers, and survivors, all in one. They were humans, but not as he knew them. The sun set completely, leaving Krylos 7 in darkness. Fires from the Vorath attack still burned, but for the first time, the colonists did not feel hopeless. They had survived the first wave, and they had seen what true human strength looked like. Admiral Koran called a briefing with his officers. "We will hold this planet," he said. "The Vorath will think twice before returning, but we do not linger for praise. We prepare, we train, and we ensure this colony can survive without us. That is the true measure of aid." Elena took notes. The fleet had not come to negotiate. They had not come to offer comfort. They had come to teach humans how to be unstoppable, how to survive when all odds were against them. Terran stayed awake that night, looking at the stars. The Deathworlders had arrived, and the Vorath had been stopped, for now. But more than that, Krylos 7 had been shown the potential that humans could achieve. Strength, courage, and ingenuity were not just stories. They were real, living, and unstoppable. And somewhere in the fleet above, Koran watched as the planet settled into an uneasy calm. The Vorath would return, no doubt, but the Deathworlders were ready. And for the first time, Krylos 7 understood that the galaxy would never underestimate humans again. The first light of Krylos 7's morning revealed a landscape both beautiful and scarred. Fires smoldered in the distance, the remnants of the Vorath's attack still smoking. Buildings had collapsed, roads were broken, and the once pristine forests bore the marks of alien bombardment. Yet among the destruction, the colonists began to feel something new. Hope. It came from the presence of the Deathworlders. Humans unlike any they had ever known. They were everywhere, moving through the colony with purpose. Some were repairing buildings with makeshift tools and incredible speed. Others were organizing the colonists, showing them how to fortify their defenses, using the terrain in ways that seemed almost instinctive. Commander Elena Voss walked through the streets with a squad of Deathworlders at her side. Each one was a study in discipline and efficiency. Their movements were calm, deliberate, almost mechanical, but their presence radiated confidence. She had expected powerful soldiers, but she did not expect humans who seemed to bend the environment to their will. The first lesson came at the colony's main power station. The Vorath had damaged the facility badly during the previous night's attack. Engineers were working frantically, but they were inexperienced in combat conditions. One Deathworlder stepped forward, his voice low but commanding. "Step back. Let us show you." Without hesitation, he and two others moved into the facility. They examined the broken conduits and generators, working with a combination of mechanical skill and battlefield improvisation. Sparks flew as they repaired, rewired, and reinforced the power station in record time. "What? How are you doing that?" one young engineer asked, astonished. The Deathworlder glanced at him, expression neutral. "We adapt. We survive. You can learn if you pay attention." Elena realized that this was the difference. The Deathworlders did not just fight. They taught humans to fight and survive in ways no manual could explain. Meanwhile, on the streets, colonists were being trained in defensive tactics. A squad of Deathworlders had set up a small training area in a partially ruined plaza. Terran, the young boy who had watched the fleet arrive, stood at the edge of the crowd, eager to learn. One Deathworlder held a small device, simple in appearance but deadly in effect. "This is a gravity trap," he said. "It will immobilize enemies. Without destroying them, place it wisely. Think about the terrain. Think about your opponent." Colonists mimicked his movements, placing traps near crumbled walls, fallen trees, and narrow alleys. The Deathworlders walked among them, correcting mistakes silently, demonstrating adjustments with precision. Even in this small exercise, the colonists felt their confidence growing. Terran whispered to a friend, "They're teaching us, but in a way that makes us stronger too." In orbit above the planet, Admiral Koran observed the ongoing operations. "The colony will not need us forever," he said to his officers. "We are here to teach, to guide. Soon they will be able to defend themselves against any return of the Vorath. One officer frowned. But, Admiral, the Vorath will come back. Their fleet is larger than ours. Are they truly ready? Corran's eyes narrowed. They will be ready. Humans adapt quickly when shown what they are capable of. The Vorath have underestimated humanity before. They will again. As the day progressed, the colonists began to see the Deathworlders in action against isolated Vorath scouts. A small group of alien ships had strayed too close to the colony perimeter, expecting an easy strike. The Deathworlders responded without hesitation. Using the terrain to their advantage, they lured the Vorath into narrow canyons where the alien ships could not maneuver. Gravity traps immobilized their smaller craft, while concentrated fire from the Deathworlder ships disabled the larger vessels. The entire engagement lasted minutes, but the colonists watched in awe. The Deathworlders did not just defeat the enemy, they controlled the battlefield. Elena walked among her people, noting their reactions. Faces that had been pale with fear now held determination. "They're teaching us more than combat," she said quietly. "They're teaching us courage." In the makeshift command center, engineers worked alongside Deathworlders to fortify the colony. Simple structures were turned into strong defensive positions. Bridges were rigged with traps. Barricades were constructed using debris, but with careful precision that maximized protection while allowing mobility. One Deathworlder approached a group of engineers. "You are thinking small," he said. "Think bigger. Use the terrain. Use the environment. A small human can control a larger force if they think like a Deathworlder." The engineers listened carefully. The idea was simple, but the application was revolutionary. It required creativity, logic, and daring, all at once. Terran, unable to resist curiosity, followed a squad into a ruined forest near the colony. Trees had been scorched by Vorath energy weapons, and the ground was uneven and dangerous. The Deathworlders moved as if the forest were a puzzle, stepping over obstacles, setting traps, and using fallen logs as defensive cover. One of the older Deathworlders noticed Terran. "Stay close, watch, and learn. Adapt. You are human, yes, but you can survive like a Deathworlder if you are willing." Terran nodded eagerly. Every step, every movement, every action became a lesson. By the end of the day, he realized he could move through the terrain in ways he never imagined, using both his instincts and what he had observed from the Deathworlders. Back at the colony, the Vorath were regrouping. Word had spread quickly through their ranks that the Krylos 7 colony was no ordinary human settlement. The enemy fleets were cautious now, hesitant to strike without full knowledge of what they faced. The Deathworlders were aware of this. They did not celebrate the temporary calm. Instead, they prepared for the inevitable counterattack. Patrols were organized. Early warning systems were enhanced, and the colonists were drilled in emergency response. Every action was deliberate, every movement calculated. Elena watched and learned. She realized that the SOS had done more than bring help. It had brought knowledge, strength, and survival instincts that had been hidden in humanity all along. Night fell. The colony gathered for a briefing. The Deathworlders addressed the colonists directly for the first time. "You will be tested," one of them said. "The Vorath will return. They will believe you are weak. They are wrong. You are human. You are adaptable. You can survive. You will survive." The words were simple, but they carried powerful meaning. Fear, which had dominated the colony for so long, began to fade. It was replaced with a sense of purpose, determination, and understanding. Humans were not just victims. They could become warriors and strategists in their own right. Terran listened, wide-eyed. For the first time, he felt like he belonged to something bigger than himself. He was a part of humanity's strength, and he understood that the Deathworlders were showing them how to unlock it. The following day, the first coordinated patrols were launched. Teams of colonists, now trained by Deathworlders, ventured beyond the immediate colony perimeter. They moved carefully, using traps and terrain advantages, testing their skills against small Vorath scouting groups. The results were astonishing. The colonists were effective, adapting quickly to lessons learned. Where before they would have panicked or fled, they now moved with purpose, setting traps and using environmental advantages to control enemy movements. The Vorath were confused and frustrated. They had expected humans to be weak, disorganized, and easy prey. They were wrong. In orbit, Admiral Corrin observed the progress. "They are learning quickly," he said. "Soon, Krylos 7 will be ready not just to survive, but to fight back. The Vorath will think twice before returning, and if they do, they will learn that humans are not weak nor defenseless." Elena, watching the patrols from the observation deck, felt a surge of pride. Her people were growing stronger every hour, guided by humans who had survived the deadliest planets in the galaxy. "We're learning," she whispered, "not just to fight, but to survive and to win." Tarin, standing beside her, nodded. "They're teaching us how to be human, the way we were meant to be." The night fell quietly. For the first time since the Vorath arrived, Krylos 7 felt a measure of security. Fires still burned, but the colony was alive, organized, and learning the ways of survival from humans who had mastered it. And somewhere in the fleet above, the Deathworlders watched, silent but vigilant. They had not come to rule nor to shelter the colony. They had come to awaken humanity's hidden strength, to show the colonists that even in the darkest hours, humans could rise, adapt, and endure. The Vorath would return. That was certain. But Krylos 7 would be ready. The SOS had been answered not with simple aid, but with the awakening of humanity's most formidable instincts. The sky above Krylos 7 was tense and restless. For days, the colony had trained, repaired, and prepared under the guidance of the Deathworlders. Every building, every pathway, every piece of terrain had been studied and fortified. The colonists had learned to use traps, cover, and even the natural environment as weapons against the Vorath. Yet, the sense of calm was fragile, for the Vorath were plotting a return. Commander Elena Voss stood at the observation deck, scanning the horizon with her binocular monitors. "They're coming," she said softly, though her voice carried, through the command hub. Engineers and guards froze, eyes turning toward her. Tarin, the young boy who had followed the Deathworlders tirelessly, clutched the railing beside her. "How do we fight them?" he asked. Elena glanced at him and smiled faintly. "We fight like they've never seen humans fight before. We use what we've learned, and we fight together." In orbit, Admiral Corrin and his fleet detected the approaching Vorath armada. The aliens had regrouped quickly and were now more cautious but determined. Their ships, sleek and deadly, moved in formations designed to overwhelm the colony's defenses. But they did not understand what awaited them. Corrin's eyes scanned the readings. "Prepare the planetary defenses," he said. "Let the humans on the surface demonstrate what they have learned. This will be their first true test." Unlike ordinary humans, the Deathworlders did not simply attack. They calculated, using terrain, traps, and timing to their advantage. "We will show them the cost of underestimating humanity," Corrin added quietly. On the ground, the colonists moved with a precision that would have been unimaginable weeks ago. Barricades were manned, traps were armed, and scouts were stationed in every key area. The Deathworlders supervised quietly, correcting errors and reinforcing strategies without stepping into every moment. "Remember your training," one Deathworlder instructed a small group of colonists. "Do not panic. Observe. Adapt. The Vorath do not expect humans to be this capable." The first wave of Vorath approached from the south. Small fighter craft skimming the atmosphere tested the colony's defenses. Energy beams streaked across the sky, setting fires and striking barricades. Yet the colonists, now skilled in Deathworlder techniques, used the terrain effectively. Gravity traps, improvised barricades, and ambush points slowed the enemy advance. Terran, watching from a hilltop with a squad, felt a rush of confidence. He had learned how to predict enemy movements, how to use the land as an advantage, and how to act calmly under fire. Every skill the Deathworlders had taught him was now a lifeline. Tatibu. Vorath, expecting weak resistance, were shocked. Their swift, calculated attacks faltered as they encountered traps they could not predict. Small patrols were immobilized by simple gravity devices, while larger ships were funneled into narrow canyons where concentrated fire brought them down. Efficiently, colonists cheered quietly, watching as their new skills turned the tide of the initial skirmishes. It was not brute force alone that won the day. It was intelligence, adaptation, and strategy, the very principles the Deathworlders had drilled into them. Elena moved along the front line, coordinating defenses with a calm authority that had not existed in her before. Engineers rerouted power to critical defenses, soldiers manned barricades confidently, and even civilians were actively contributing to traps and early warning systems. Krylo 7 had transformed into a fortress of living, humans capable of resisting even a formidable enemy. Meanwhile, the Vorath tried a new tactic. A fleet of larger ships, bristling with energy weapons, descended upon the colony from orbit, aiming to crush the defenses in one decisive strike. But the Deathworlders had anticipated this. Use the terrain, Corran ordered. Channel them into the canyons. Force them into positions where their strength counts for nothing. On the ground, colonists and Deathworlders worked in tandem. Smoke and mirrors, barricades, and traps funneled the Vorath into narrow zones where concentrated fire from both ground and orbital forces devastated their ships. One massive Vorath vessel was immobilized in a canyon by a combination of gravity, traps, and energy fire. Sparks and smoke billowed as the alien crew attempted to escape, only to be met with precise, controlled volleys from Deathworlder squads. Terran watched as the ship fell silent. "We did that," he whispered, almost in disbelief. One of the older Deathworlders clapped him lightly on the shoulder. "No, humans did that. You learned. You applied. That is what counts." The battle continued for hours, with Vorath reinforcements arriving in waves. Yet the colony held. Every attack was met with preparation, strategy, and skill. Colonists who had once cowered behind walls now moved with purpose, directing traps, guiding squads, and countering enemy maneuvers. Even small children contributed, in ways they could manage, alerting others to incoming attacks, operating simple devices, and relaying messages. Every human in the colony was part of a larger system, functioning with precision and determination. Elena noticed the change in her people. Fear had been replaced by confidence, panic by purpose. Where once humans had been prey, they were now hunters and defenders. In orbit, Corran monitored the situation. The Vorath fleet was faltering. Their ships were falling into traps, their formations breaking under unexpected tactics, and their morale was weakening. The Deathworlders had not just defended the colony. They had shown the Vorath that humans could fight intelligently, adapt quickly, and endure relentlessly. Corran allowed himself a small nod. "The colony is learning faster than anticipated," he remarked. "Soon, they will not need our presence at all. They will fight as we do, without fear, without hesitation, and with unstoppable force." Back on the surface, the final push of the Vorath began. A large strike force attempted to breach the colony from the west, targeting the main power station. Elena and her team had predicted this. Barricades were reinforced, traps were armed, and Deathworlders positioned themselves strategically along the path. The strike force hit hard, but the defenders were ready. Gravity traps immobilized their first wave, while concentrated fire disabled their larger units. Explosions and energy blasts lit up the sky as the two sides clashed. Yet with every passing moment, the Vorath were pushed back. Terran moved alongside, a squad, his heart pounding. He had trained for this moment, learned from the Deathworlders, and now he could contribute. When a small Vorath patrol tried to flank them, he activated a trap that immobilized the aliens, allowing his squad to neutralize the threat. For the first time, he felt the thrill of victory, the power of human ingenuity. Hours later, the battle finally began to wind down. The Vorath, battered and demoralized, retreated into orbit, leaving Krylos 7 intact. Fires still burned, but the colony was alive, organized and stronger than ever. Colonists cheered, though exhaustion weighed heavily on every body. Elena walked among her people, pride shining in her eyes. "We did it," she said softly. "Not because of them, but because of what we learned from them. The Deathworlders didn't just fight for us, they showed us how to be strong ourselves." Taran grinned, exhausted but exhilarated. "We're not just surviving, we're winning." As night fell, the Deathworlders gathered in small groups evaluating the battle. They did not celebrate, they did not boast. Their work was never finished, for they understood that survival required constant vigilance. One Deathworlder approached Elena. "Your people are ready for more," he said simply. "They fought well, but they can fight better. They can defend, adapt, and even attack if necessary. That is the way of survival." Elena nodded. "We've learned more in a few days than we ever thought possible." The Deathworlder smiled, faintly. "You will continue to learn, and when the Vorath return, you will be ready." In orbit, Admiral Karan observed the battlefield one last time before preparing to withdraw. "The colony has survived the first counterattack," he said. "They have proven their ability to adapt and endure. Soon, they will not need our presence to defend themselves, and the galaxy will see the true strength of humans." On the surface, the colonists began repairing damage, tending to the wounded, and organizing their defenses for any future attacks. For the first time, they felt not just hope, but empowerment. They had faced overwhelming odds and emerged victorious, not because of outside help, but because they had learned how to become strong themselves. Taran, lying on a hilltop with his friend, looked at the stars. "We did it. And we can do it again," he whispered. Elena stood beside him. "Yes," she said, "and now Krylos 7 will never be the same. We have learned, we have grown, and we have survived. And one day, the Vorath will learn that humans are never weak." And somewhere above the planet, the Deathworlder fleet observed, silently, knowing that their purpose had been fulfilled. They had not just defended a colony, they had awakened a sleeping strength in humanity, ensuring that when the galaxy challenged them again, humans would be ready, relentless, and unstoppable. The morning after the battle broke quietly over Krylos 7. Smoke still drifted from the edges of the colony, but there was no chaos, only the steady hum of activity. Humans moved with purpose, repairing, cleaning, and organizing. The Vorath, humiliated and retreating, had left the planet for now. Yet the colony knew better than to believe the war was over. The Vorath would return, and when they did, Krylos 7 would need to be ready. Commander Elena Voss walked through the streets, observing her people. The transformation was remarkable. Just days ago, panic had gripped the colony. Now there was a quiet confidence in every action. Civilians worked alongside soldiers, engineers reinforced defenses, and even children contributed to early warning systems. Every person understood their role in the survival of their world. Taran ran past her, carrying a bundle of supplies to a defensive outpost. "Commander!" he called. "We've finished the new traps along the canyon." Elena smiled. Well done, Taryn. You've grown stronger than I imagined. The boy beamed, realizing he was no longer just a frightened observer. He was a participant in humanity's survival, trained by the best and ready to protect what he loved. In orbit, the Deathworlder fleet hovered silently. Admiral Corrin observed the planet below, noting the changes in the colony. Their people were no longer helpless. They had survived the first counterattack and learned to think, adapt, and fight like Deathworlders themselves. "Prepare to return to patrol," Corrin said to his officers. "The colony will continue its training. We have shown them the first step. The next battles are theirs to fight." The Deathworlders did not linger to celebrate. Their mission was never comfort or guidance alone. It was to awaken the hidden strength of humans, to show them that survival, strategy, and courage could overcome even the deadliest odds. Back on the planet, Elena convened a meeting in the command hub. Maps of the colony and surrounding terrain were displayed across holographic screens. Engineers, soldiers, and selected civilians gathered, each learning from the past battles. "We've survived the first attack," Elena began, her voice calm and authoritative. "But the Vorath will return. They think they can strike us down again. They are wrong. We have learned from the Deathworlders. We have grown stronger. And now we are ready to defend our home on our terms." The room erupted in quiet murmurs of agreement. There was no fear, only determination. Humans were no longer passive. They were a force to be reckoned with. The Vorath, scattered in distant space, were regrouping. Their pride had been wounded. Their fleets were intact, but their confidence was shaken. Reports of Krylos 7's resilience reached their commanders, and confusion spread. They had expected humans to be weak, scattered, and easy prey. They were instead met with strategy, intelligence, and adaptability, the hallmarks of Deathworlder training applied by ordinary humans. The alien fleets debated their next move. Some argued for immediate retaliation, while others feared returning. Too soon. Fear of humans had never been a factor before. Now, Krylos 7 had changed the equation. On the surface, the colonists continued their work. A large crater from the Vorath's orbital strike had been transformed into a defensive stronghold. Barricades, traps, and observation posts now filled every edge. Soldiers moved with purpose, demonstrating the techniques taught by Deathworlders. Engineers monitored structural integrity, while civilians operated communications and emergency systems. Taryn walked with a group of friends, practicing a new technique of rapid alert and counter-trap deployment. He felt the thrill of capability, of being part of something greater than himself. The boy who had once watched the sky in fear was now a young protector, ready to fight alongside his people. Elena observed quietly. "The next battle will be different," she said to her lieutenant. "We won't just survive, we will fight intelligently, decisively, and without hesitation. Humanity has awakened here." As the day progressed, the colony held its first large-scale training exercises without the immediate presence of Deathworlders. Groups of colonists worked together to simulate Vorath attacks, testing traps, coordinating strategies, and adapting in real time. Mistakes were made, but lessons were learned quickly. One engineer remarked, "It's amazing how much we've learned. I never thought we could move and think like this in just a few days." A Deathworlder standing nearby nodded. "You've shown potential. Humans are resilient and adaptive. But remember, strength without discipline is wasted. Use your minds as well as your bodies. That is the true power." That evening, Krylos 7's skies glimmered with the faint outlines of distant stars. The Deathworlder fleet prepared to depart, returning to patrol the far reaches of space. Before leaving, Corrin sent one final message. To the humans of Krylos 7, it read, "You have survived your first test. You have proven that intelligence, courage, and adaptation are your greatest weapons. The galaxy will challenge you again, but now you are ready. Remember, Humans endure. Humans fight. Humans prevail. Elena received the message and shared it with the colony. Applause and cheers filled the command hub. Hope was no longer a fragile thing. It was a tangible, living force. The next morning, life on Krylo 7 resumed in earnest. Children played amidst training zones, soldiers conducted drills with precision, and engineers worked tirelessly to strengthen infrastructure. Taran helped construct new traps along the perimeter, showing younger children how to use them safely. Elena walked through the colony, noticing the changes in every face. Where there had been fear, there was courage. Where there had been despair, there was determination. Humans had learned to survive, to think strategically, and to fight effectively, all without losing their humanity. The colony had been forged in fire, tempered by battle, and strengthened by knowledge. Krylo 7 was no longer just a settlement. It was a symbol of human resilience. Weeks passed. The Vorath remained distant, wary of returning after the crushing defeats and failed reconnaissance. The colony, meanwhile, thrived under its new discipline. Communications with nearby human systems were restored. Trade ships and explorers began cautiously approaching, reassured by reports of the colony's strength. Krylo 7 had become a beacon of human potential in the galaxy. Taran gazed at the horizon one evening, thinking of the Deathworlders who had come and gone. "They showed us what we could be," he said softly to Elena. She smiled. "Yes, Taran, they didn't just save us. They taught us to save ourselves, and now we can face the galaxy with confidence. The Vorath will return one day, but we will be ready, and not just ready, we will prevail." Months later, Krylo 7 celebrated a festival of survival. Fires burned safely in controlled zones, music and laughter filled the air, and stories of the first battle were told with pride. Colonists spoke of bravery, strategy, and courage, inspired by the lessons of the Deathworlders. Elena stood before the gathered crowd, looking at faces young and old. "We have survived more than anyone thought possible," she said. "We have fought, we have learned, and we have grown. Krylo 7 is strong, humanity is strong, and together, we are unstoppable." The crowd erupted in cheers. Taran felt a sense of belonging and purpose stronger than ever before. He had seen humans at their weakest and now at their strongest. The lessons of the Deathworlders had unlocked something within them all, the true potential of humanity. In orbit, the Deathworlder fleet continued its patrols, silently observing the galaxy. They did not interfere, but they knew Krylo 7 was prepared. Humans had faced overwhelming odds, adapted with speed and intelligence, and demonstrated the resilience of their species. Admiral Corrin looked toward the planet one last time. "This is the beginning," he said. "The galaxy will know that humans endure, humans fight, and humans prevail. Krylo 7 is just the start." And on the surface, the people of Krylo 7 slept peacefully that night, knowing that even in the face of the most ruthless enemy, humans could rise, survive, and triumph. The SOS had been answered, not with mere aid, but with strength, knowledge, and the awakening of human potential. Krylo 7 had survived. Krylo 7 had grown, and humanity, in its purest, fiercest form, had proven that it was unstoppable. The galaxy would never underestimate humans again.